Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the summit, Harness Your Creative Power. My guest today is Imelda Almqvist. Hello, Imelda, and welcome.
Hi, Koenhild. It's great to be here.
Great to have you here. Imelda, let me introduce you very quickly to all the people who do not know you yet. Maybe some will do. So Imelda is a shamanic practitioner. She's an artist. She runs the School of Sacred Art and Shamanism in London. And she started in Sweden the school in Norse Shamanism, True North. She is a presenter at the Shift Network, a presenter for Year of Ceremony with Sounds True in Colorado, and runs a program for teenagers, The Time Travelers. So, Imelda, did I forget something important? Is there something you would like to add to the introduction?
Well, maybe that I've written a book called Born Shamans. So talking about the program for teenagers, if people are interested in a spiritual toolkit for children and young people, then they could get my book, and many things are explained in there, and there's session plans as well. People may find that interesting.
Yeah, that's important indeed. Good that you added. Now, Imelda, how did you get attracted, or how did you find shamanism, or how did shamanism find you?
It tends to be the other way around, as you say, like shamanism finds us. And for me, it's been painting my way into shamanism. Because from a very young age, I've always painted and written. And for me, painting has always been about dreams and other worlds and allies from other worlds. So I've really always painted and painted my way into shamanism. It's just when I was younger, I didn't realize it was called shamanism. It was not a word we used in my Roman Catholic family. So it was only later in life I realized that what I had been doing actually had a word, and it was called shamanism.
Okay, so you feel it was shamanism because the images that you painted had to do with different worlds, or why would you link it to shamanism, your paintings?
Well, because my paintings were very otherworldly, and at some point I realized they were really about making the other world, the spirit world, visible to people who were not able to see that. But also from a very young age, I was doing classical shamanic work. Like as a very young child, I'd be up at night, like helping dead people transition. And, so I'd be very busy at night. I return to my bed, go to school in the morning. My parents had no idea I was doing any of this. And it was a revelation to me when at age maybe 25, I came across this word psychopomp work, or a psychopomp is a soul conductor. And it's like, right, okay, that's what I have been doing all of my life. It's a classic form of shamanic work. I just had no idea it was shamanism.
Well, yeah. Could you speak with somebody about it? Did people know? Because I imagine that people were maybe not open for what you were doing at night.
No, I don't think they were. And I think my mother only found out when she read my book, like 40 years later, 30 years later. Yeah. So, no, I didn't speak to people about it, but I had very good spirit allies. So I always felt very safe. So my other world friends, my friends in the spirit world, they were very good. They would give me instructions. They always made sure I was safe. They would make sure I could, back to my bed. So, though in hindsight, I think that's quite a big thing to be doing. Though I know more children do it. I work with a lot of children who do this. It's not only me. It's actually quite common, but parents don't always know about it. But because I had very good spirit allies, it was never a problem. So I never actually felt a need to talk to anyone about it. In the family I grew up in, it wasn't the sort of subject you were going to raise with anyone, really.
Yeah, because I mean, I know as well that children have access to other worlds and also see many more things that we as adults see, because we at a certain moment get trained that this is all imagination and that
yes,
we could better be quiet about it. But for you, you had your space to develop it for yourself. This is beautiful.
Yes, and also that's where painting was so good. So I mean, I wasn't talking to other people about it, but because I had my painting and drawing and writing, those were like outlets for me where I could freely engage with the images and guidance received and that way of perceiving the world and the cosmos. And because it was like art, it was non-threatening, like no one had an issue with it.
Right.
So I was lucky that way, that I had that. If I hadn't had that, maybe it would have been harder to handle for me as a child.
Yeah, and how lovely that you today work with children and adolescents, or mainly adolescents, I guess, so that they can also explore these worlds in a safe way, because you have this experience from yourself.
Yeah, it means that I can meet them there, but it is also my experience that a much larger, call it, percentage of young people than we think actually does access the spirit world, or they have visionary dreams, or they actually sometimes have a dialogue with a tree, or a very strong intuition where they know something is going to happen or something's just not right, but you can't explain why. But as you just said, we live in a culture where that mode of perceiving the world is shut down from an early age. So children at a very young age come under pressure. Where it's like, well, do not be silly, come on now, because the adults are not comfortable hearing about it. And then what happens, some children really push it away and almost forget about it. But there's also quite a group of children, and more so today, because we're living through a paradigm shift, there are many young people who still give it a space somewhere within them. And then if you create a group for young people where all children share that, you have the amazing thing that they can share it. They realize they're not alone, and you can say, well, okay, how do you handle this in school? Or say, when bullying occurs, or whatever, like what's a good spiritual toolkit for that? And when you bring children together and you open that sacred space and you give just that little bit of structure and leadership, it is amazing what young people can do. So not all young people shut down. That's a kind of, I think, outdated belief I am finding.
Yeah. Yeah, wonderful that they have a space there where they can live those sides. And I wanted to ask you, especially for our listeners and our audience, what you mean with different worlds. Maybe you could give some explanation, because I'm not sure that everybody is familiar with it.
No, that is fair enough. And the issue then is, from what cosmology are you going to be speaking? Because, for instance, in Norse shamanism, I know you are German, you may know that there are 9 worlds. If one works within core shamanism, which is what I initially trained in, which is a shamanism where, things were taken from shamanism all over the world, but commonalities that all of these different indigenous forms of shamanism had in common. And then we commonly work with a model where there are 3 worlds, where we speak of a lower world, which is not the underworld, a middle world, and an upper world, meaning that the world we live in everyday reality, like where you and me are speaking right now, that world has an energetic parallel world, and we call that the middle world. So as well as the material reality, there is also an energetic parallel world, but everything that exists here also exists in pure energy form. And that is the world that shamans use when they're looking for missing people or missing objects, or when they're working with situations that are currently happening in this world. Say when you do psychopomp work, helping people transition in, say, a war zone, or where there has been a catastrophe, or things like that. And then in addition to that middle world, which is very much a reflection of our world, but it's pure energy, less dense, easier to navigate, we also have a lower world, Nantakoda, you would generally find a means of going down. And that is a very earthy place. It's almost like going deep down into the earth. You often find a lot of animals there, you find landscapes there. And also you sometimes find ancestors there, compassionate beings that can help you. And so that's like a slightly different place. And then also from the middle world, you can go up, and you would generally do this, maybe it would be like climbing a tree and going through a rabbit hole down the roots, or climbing a tree and going up, or another way of traveling. But then the upper world is very much, it's very airy, it's not as solid, there are vast distances, it has many layers. And in that upper world, you can find amazing places like, say, crystal cities, where, you know, you could attend school. There are like these great sort of schools in the upper world where you could go and find teachers and attend lessons. And it's very much, you know, like the cosmos, but in energy form. And because it is an energy form, you can navigate it and you can travel the vast distances because you don't have to take your body with you. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. To me, it does make sense. I'm sure it makes sense to everybody listening here. How do we get to those worlds?
By finding, well, the first thing we have to do is we have to open ourselves to moving into an altered state of consciousness. And, you know, people may sometimes think that that sounds a bit scary, which is actually not. It's not so different from when you first wake up in the morning and you know you're not asleep anymore. But like the concerns of the day have not crashed in. So you're in that delicious in-between space. That's really what it is. You're in a very mildly, like very relaxed, receptive, yet alert state of consciousness. It's a very mild shift. That is often done using music, or in shamanism we use drumming. You can use meditation, some people use yoga, exercises. Can be done in a dancing, can be done in a lot of different ways. Drumming is a popular one. It just helps people make that shift. And then in core shamanism, we work with what we call an axis mundi, literally the axis of the world. And that means that this is the way we're going to use that. We have a point of departure and a point of return. So it's going to be safe. We're going to be finding our way back. And that could be a tree, like climbing the world tree or going down the roots. It could also be a cave or a mountain, or sometimes people have a landscape or a location on earth they're very fond of. It could be a favorite hill or something. And then they could start that in everyday reality as their starting point, you know, change to an altered state of consciousness, go on these other world explorations, but then always come back to that point. That's very important, that we're not going to be getting lost and not knowing how to make our way back.
Yes, yeah. I jump a little bit because I think this fits in with what you just explained. You do with young people also time traveling, right?
Yes, that's why they're called the time travelers.
And is this similar to what you explained, or is it something different? Because it says time traveler, so you travel through time.
Yes, well, it's really the same thing, because once you're in that mildly altered state of consciousness, like anything is possible. And the group has that name because my own 3 children gave it that name many years ago, and it's turned out to be a cool name. It fits the word quite well. But yes, just as we can step outside everyday reality, once we are working, once we can access the spirit world, in the spirit world, time does not exist. Time is an organizing dimension on earth. So as long as we're on earth, we're inside time. But the moment we're in the spirit world, we step outside all that, meaning we can travel vast distances, but we can travel outside time. So in shamanism, we say nothing is ever lost. So anything or anyone that was or will be in the future is like somewhere and can be found. So not only with the time travelers have we like come to the past, like they've done things like going to Atlantis and learning from teachers there, or going to different periods in history and seeing how young people had it then. But also we've come to the future. Like, you know, you can go to the future to, like, you know, when you have become an ancestor to your own descendants, like many generations away. And because, you know, outside time, they're already there somewhere, you can start working with them. So that's something I've done with the time travelers, and I'm also doing on the, you know, Year of Ceremony Sounds True. My presentation is about that, like how we can already, even though these people haven't been born on Earth, but we can already communicate with these souls, with those beings, and actually receive guidance from them about how do they want us to prepare the world, what do they want to find when they're going to be born here. So it's like also like bringing, you know, all sentient beings and, you know, everyone into that process of making decisions about what's happening to the earth. Not just think it's just about us who are here right now. That's a very short-term, very limited means of perception.
Yes, indeed. Sounds fascinating to me. I know about the drumming a little bit. I've done a little bit of this work and world, and I just find it so fascinating that there is so much more than what.
Oh yes.
Yeah. Than we think there is. You know, it's full of full of life indeed in all directions, as you say. Yeah. So you also offer healing, shamanic healing, if I'm right.
Well, I did a lot of that. At the moment, I mostly teach it. I have many students at the moment, so my focus has shifted. I mean, I sometimes do some healing work, but my true focus is on teaching shamanic healing work. Because it's just a way of reaching a larger number of people. I have to see them all individually. I can just like keep on going and never be done. But I've got some incredibly talented students who are doing a shamanic practitioner training with me. And then it sort of means that, and a lot of people want to see someone who worked the way I work, because, I built a reputation in that work. So I'm now training students, like teaching them the way I work myself, so they can be out there and offer shamanic healing work. So I offer some, but very limited edition. So most people who contact me are seen by my colleagues or my students.
Right. But I might still ask the question what shamanic healing contains, what it is. Yeah, is it different? Yes. Is it different to, let's say, allopathy or homeopathy, or what is the shamanic healing?
Shamanic healing, well, it's related to all of those things, because the things you mentioned are all holistic forms of medicine. And holistic medicine or energy medicine works on the principle of, making people whole again, but on all levels. It's not just, oh, I have a problem and I give you medicine for that one thing, but it's understood that everything that happens, even if it's breaking a foot, will have a spiritual dimension as well. There will be a reason why you break your foot on that day and in that way. There will be something in that. Maybe you need to slow down, or maybe there's something you need to look at. But it's, accidents don't exist. These things have a spiritual meaning and a spiritual background. So then what we do in shamanic healing work, people will present with the things they bring to a doctor or a psychotherapist. Could be trauma, could be physical pain, could be a life where there's no luck and everything is going badly. And then what we do in shamanic healing work is we help the person make the journey back to wholeness. So as it were, we bring them back into alignment with the divine, with like how they were when they were first born on earth, and their bodies were pristine and fresh and everything was in divine alignment, which is also wholeness. The word health is related to the word whole, etymologically speaking, and also to the word holy, as in sacred. That also all goes back to the same root stem, and that is about being whole means we are in alignment with divinity, like we are, we embody our divinity.
Yeah. And when you say divinity, is it or everything, all that is, or how do you see divinity?
Big subject, big question.
Yes.
I think, there are different cosmologies out there. And, with my own students, I encourage them to arrive at a way of thinking that's for them. So I think people have to work that out for themselves. I'm happy to share how I see it, but it's really only my thing. I'm not like, saying other people have to go with that. And the way I see it is that, we have spirit, which is the force that permeates all that is. And the word for spirit in many languages, in German probably as well, is related to breath. It comes from the Latin spiritus, and that means breath. In Hebrew, it would be ruach. In Old Norse, it would be und. So it's about that, breathing breath into something so it comes alive, life force, animating force. But then there's also such a thing as soul. And the way I perceive that is that I believe that there is that once upon a time, there was this creator being, however we perceive that. For me, it's not a Christian cult any longer, but, called God a sacred mystery, who perceived the desire to not be alone anymore, for there to be something other than itself. So in that moment, this divine being like fragmented or created, meaning that lots of smaller units of consciousness came into being, and I consider myself to be one of those units of consciousness. And in that process, I think we all got a divine essence, like a divine spark that makes us an ensouled being. And the moment that leaves, obviously we die, we just become a dead body. So to me, that is soul. And then I personally believe that I'm on a long journey that probably involves many lifetimes as well. I personally believe I've been here before, and that there is a karmic component to that, that I'm working through, relationships and issues with people and places. But that one day, when hopefully I've dealt with all that, I will make my way back to the divine. And I think we're all on that journey, not just me. I think all beings are. And then, my soul essence will join again that larger divinity, that original wholeness, that oneness of the ineffable, this mysterious being, where it originally came from. So that is how I see my relationship to and my journey with divinity.
Yeah, thank you. Now, your artwork, I can see a little bit in the background there. There is
one on the wall. That's the painting that went on the cover of my book.
Okay, and could you say a little bit about that? Is it possible that you...
Sure. Well, that is a painting I made. My book was going to be published just over a year ago, so Natural Born Shamans. And then the publisher said, oh, we have like an image file, and you can put something on there. And I said, no. Like, I'm a painter. I want to make the painting that goes on the cover of my own book. And fortunately, they let me do it. So what I've tried to do is I have painted this mother goddess or mother figure. I don't know how much you can see, but around her is like a rainbow snake, which is the Australian Aboriginal creator being. And she has some sort of children with her, and there's like a baby being born from her womb. But also around her in the snake are, all these faces of more souls of children. So it's also that whole cycle of, the great mother, the goddess mother, she who gives life, also reabsorbs it back within herself. So, any sort of mother goddess is per definition always a death goddess as well, because, we cannot give life without at some time also taking it back. Nothing can live forever on our planet. So what I've tried to paint is that kind of, that whole life cycle of a human being, going from an embryo to, being a child, having a human mother as well as a divine mother, and then eventually, returning back to that divine place of mystery, the womb of the goddess, if you like.
Yeah, no, I remember I saw it when I read through some information about you. I saw it actually on the book cover. Yeah, no, I remember. So where do you get inspired? Where do these images come from? You said you from very early on you painted and painted. How do you get those inspirations? Where does it come from?
I think from anyone, from anywhere. I think dreams are pretty big for me. I do a lot of, I work with my own personal dreams, and I bring dream work into all the groups of students I have, both in the UK, other places like the US. And I'm about to teach a module in Philadelphia in a few weeks' time, where a whole group of people are going to come together, sleep in the same building, and really enter the dreaming of the world. So not just like falling asleep and dreaming, but blurring that whole boundary between dreaming and being awake. And that is the state where we can go to the very heart of creation. And we can dance with the gods and goddess of creation. And it's from that place we can start creating healthy reality. So that's one of the projects I'm working on. So dreams are a big thing, but also really like, anything like a particular color, seeing something in nature, maybe a line from a poem, a piece of music, a comment my children make, how younger children make these really fantastic comments, and a whole world of images opens up. So there is no limit to that. I would say that absolutely anything, even things that may not look very promising, for me can spark off a poem or a painting or an article, because that inspiration is all around us. We can like tap into it anytime.
Yeah. And maybe that's something important for our audience to hear, how you just described that if we are open, we have to be open, of course, that we can be inspired by everything and anything. And you spoke first about the dream. So this is also something like a tool to remember our dreams in the first place and write them down.
Keep a dream diary.
Yes, and then what you say, and I do the same, and many artists, by the way, do the same. Then
true.
give those images really an expression on paper or canvas or whatever, to really give it an image, not just an inner image, but also an outer image. So,
well, that's true. But also, there's inner creativity and outer creativity. You know,
okay.
yeah, because we often think, when you say the word creative, I've worked with clients. I worked with a lawyer once who said, "Oh, I'm not creative. I don't paint. I don't write music." And then actually, I could sort of see the spirit for telling me that she's way more creative than she thinks, and she needs to own that to be more effective in her life. So I interviewed her a bit about what she did at work. And then it turned out that she was extremely creative in like bringing things together, or like where other people got stuck with a legal contract, she'd find like a creative way of finding a way forward. And I had to sort of point out to her that she was actually very creative, but that it was her creativity, it was more an inner creativity. It was to do with problem solving and seeing possibilities for other people who didn't see them. And then, that will then come out in the legal work she did with people. So not for everyone who is creative is there going to be a kind of physical product, like a painting or a piece of music. So in some people's creativity lies, in other things. Mm-hmm. And just to acknowledge that. And then there's more, an outer creativity, which is what you described, that we can use our creativity to arrive at all of those things: music, dance, song, whatever it is. But the inner creativity that is not immediately seen, that is more like conceptual or deeply creative in a way that only becomes apparent when these people are in contact with other people, that too is creativity. Mm-hmm. And I think that people who are not aware of that, they need to own that and realize that, because they can go through life being really wonderful, yet not owning the fact they are creative, and that can limit people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you for indeed pointing this out, because as you just described, and I know this from my work as well, people come and say, "I'm not creative." Mm-hmm. And what they mean is this particular creativity. And
exactly,
it's important to acknowledge what you call the inner creativity. I never distinguished between the two. I will from now on. I just said that everything we do is creative. Everything. Yeah. I mean, having this conversation now with you, for me, it is creative.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
It's an act of creativity. But we link it in general to something that we can see or hear, or so it's important to point this out. Yes. So with the young people, do you with the adolescents, do they also bring it into visible form, into the outer creativity?
Yes, they do. And I would say they're sort of young adolescents, like at the moment they're aged between like 13 and 17 and a half. So I think that's more young. I mean, adolescent, I suppose, is the next age group up. But they're like, secondary school teenagers. And they adore making things. And also because, I, of course, have my limits. Like, I have my art forms, but also art forms I'm no good at all or know nothing about. So over the years, I've invited in people I know, colleagues or friends who have a cool skill, to come and do things with them. So they've done pyrography, which is like receiving designs from spirits and then burning them into wood. We've done creative writing classes where they have been writing stories in partnership with spirit. We've done so many things. We've made our own costumes. We've worked with masks and made ourselves like, animal heads to wear. And, you can work very creatively with fire. You can sort of throw things in the fire that you want to release, like limiting beliefs. But also you can sit by the fire and see how the smoke is spiraling up. And then you can do scrying from the forms in the smoke. You can maybe say something about the future or get a reading on a question. They've been on omen walks, seeing what the universe was giving us that way and what meaning that had in their lives. Or, they have like done journeys and divinations for each other, where one child gets to ask a question, the other one consults the spirit allies and then gives them an answer. So again, it's completely unlimited what you can do. Clowning, jesters, jokers, done that as well, exploring the role of the trickster and the clown in society. Body image, why we're so hung up on body image and where our true self-esteem needs to come from and where we find those places within ourselves and our own psyche. That's all stuff I've done with the kids group.
Yeah. Okay, this was a lot of.
Sorry.
I could have interrupted you at several points too, and I will just say one or two things, or ask one or two things. So you mentioned writing, yeah? That they, what are they writing then? What kind of writing is that?
What I was trying to get them, because they have to do with writing in school, which they find quite boring, because that is like, assignments and essays. So what I've tried to do with them is more the kind of writing where it becomes fun, and getting them also to use their psychic abilities. So, for instance, at one time I did a class with them where I had gathered a number of objects which I put on under a tea towel, so they had not seen them before they came. It's like, in the room. And then I first had them say, well, okay, alter state of awareness, see what we call the X-ray eyes of the shaman. So not seeing with these eyes, but with your inner eyes. Now, what is under that tea towel? And they gave a very good description of what was under there. And then we lifted the tea towel off, and these were all objects that had no relationship to each other. Just randomly picked them off the shelves in my house. And I said, okay, now I want you all to write a story that involves all of these objects. And they had to get very, very creative, kind of like, what is a toy airplane to do with a tea towel or a crystal, or, they had to really use their imagination and work with their spirit allies and every object, we had 10 things under there, they all had to be in the story they wrote.
Yeah.
We've also experimented with writing poems, doing some poetry. And as I said, the group's been running for 5 years, so we have done so many things over the years.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it sounds really inspiring. Inspiring for everybody. I feel inspired just to, as you say, take objects. Here you did it with a tea towel, but if I'm by myself, I can just go with my intuition and collect objects.
Exactly.
And put them on the table, and then create a story with all the things that I have collected. Yeah, it's beautiful. We spoke about dreams briefly here, and I also wanted to mention the word dream time, which is slightly different than dreams. Would you like to say a little bit about dream time, what it means?
The word dream time comes to us from the Australian Aboriginal peoples, and it all goes back to the way they perceive creation. So they speak of the dream time or the dreaming. You can use both. And for them, we grew up, you're German, I'm Dutch, more of the European Christian worldview of God created the world in 7 days. So there was this male creator God. The way the Aboriginal Australian people see creation is very, very different, and actually, I think, more interesting, because they say that there was not 7 days where the world was created. But creation is always ongoing, and we're all of us, through dreaming, involved in that process of creation. So we're all co-dreaming the world into being. So when an Australian Aboriginal person is walking on the land, everything has meaning. So there is a hill over there, that may be the hill where my grandmother sat and sang a song, or this may be the flight path of the bird. So the lines in the land I walk may also be the song lines of the bird, and then the songs the birds sing are related to the songs of my ancestors. So as they walk through the land, it's like, here is a waterhole where the mythical ancestors, from deep, deep time, a long time ago, my kangaroo ancestors, sat down and a certain event occurred. So to me, it is so marvelous that when you have that relationship with the earth and the land, it's no longer like we do, there's a hill, I'll just go climb it and leave some litter there. It's no, hang on. If you realize that hill is the back of our grandmother, and the place where our deep ancestors met and sort of built a tent. So we have a village there now. You're in a relationship of deep, deep respect with the earth, with the ancestors, with the creator spirits. So littering or using foul language is just not going to happen, because you're in sacred time. And then also the awareness that, we're all very powerful beings, because that larger dreaming, the dream time, it includes all the individual dreams. The trees are dreaming, the plants are dreaming, the human beings are dreaming. And the dreaming is outside time. So in the dreaming, the ancestors can still come and meet us and give us guidance. So the boundary between physical reality and spiritual, the larger spirit world out there is not so firm, because by walking on the land and being aware of the dreaming of the land, you are in all times at the same time, during the past and the future as well as in the now. So it sort of makes it clear that time is really more of either an illusion or an organizing dimension. And to me, that is a far richer way of being in the world, and one that I use with my students and I use it myself.
Yeah, for me, when I traveled there also to Australia and spoke. For me, I always have the impression that it's all one. We are all together. So there is no separation, in this.
Exactly.
In this dream time, there is this wholeness, and I'm part of it.
You are, yeah.
And I like this very much because, and I personally think it's true. I don't think there is any separation. And in dream time, this is very well explained for them. And also that we dream our world. I like that as well. Yeah,
that's true. We dream the world into being. And that's also a way of taking power back, because in our society, we live with that, separation. And a lot of people end up feeling powerless. Oh, the world just is, the politicians do stuff. I have no, all that suffering on my TV screen, I have no power over any of it. We get into a state of feeling very, very powerless. So one of the things I try to do, with students and groups I work with, is to take people back into the dreaming and to sort of see there's actually a lot, like every word you speak creates, every dream you have creates, everything you do with other people creates. So we're not powerless people, really. We're all powerful co-creators of this larger web of life.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah. You call your art sacred art. And I think in sacred art, you're the school of sacred art. And what makes the art sacred?
It's a very good question. And, I didn't immediately realize it. But even I was at art school in Amsterdam. And I always wanted to make an art that was sort of different from what other people were doing. Other people wanted to make modern art and be in art galleries. And from a very young age, from age 18, when I started art school, I just sort of knew that that's not the way I wanted to work. But again, I had no word for that. And then one day someone looked at my paintings, and at that point I called them otherworld paintings. And she said, what you make is sacred art. And that person gave me the word. And then I sort of looked at, what does the word sacred actually mean? And it comes from the Latin word sacer. And it means consecrated or dedicated to the gods. Or anything in their power, meaning that sacred art in some ways is a little set aside. Well, that's what Mircea Eliade would say, the famous author, from the everyday. Because when we work, in the realm of the sacred, we're connecting to the divine and that wholeness we're just talking about. And for me, that's probably very floaty and woozy. But for me, the difference is like this. If I were to make more like mainstream modern art, which I don't, a lot of that is about, it could be about like suffering or a particular issue in the world or the way I see the world. And I mean, art as activism absolutely has its place. But when we make sacred art, we try to create from that place of unity, that oneness we were just talking about earlier, meaning that it's art that has an uplifting effect of people. So it's art that invites people to remember again that they have a divine spark and that they have this connection to the larger web of life and the divine, the ancestors and the spirit. So it's art that opens portals for people to walk through and reconnect to what is their spiritual lineage and heritage. And not all modern art being made, has that effect or sets out to do that.
Yeah.
So is that a good enough explanation? It's kind of hard to explain.
What I get from it is that that your art or sacred art is dedicated or directed, linked, connected, that's the word I was looking for, connected to the divine, it's connected to spirit. It's different than, playing with colors, which is fine too, it's just different, or making political art, which is different. So your art is in line with everything you have explained here, you know, with divine, with the earth, with life, with everything there is. So this is, I would say, reflected in your images then.
Yes, it is, and it's really about like making art. That for me, the word portal is what it is. It's not just oh, here we have a painting and I look at it. I try to make art where there are like portals where people can actually, as it were, move through the heart of the image and find themselves transported to the world of spirit, where they can then have their own encounters and experiences. I mean, I was working on a painting once years ago, and it was still on the easel. And a woman I knew from the school, Kate, where my children went to school, she said, "Oh, can I just come on a studio visit? Because, you know, I'm interested in art." So she came, and I took her into my studio, and there was this painting on the easel. She stood there for a moment. She burst out in tears, and I said, "You know, what is it?" She said, "The spirit in that painting has just told me that I need to go to art school." And she did. She went to art school. She's completed art school now, and she's an artist now. So that's like a painting goes beyond being color or an image on canvas. It becomes an embodiment for an essence or for an actual being. And for the people who are open to that and have that sensitivity, these beings can dance and speak and pass messages.
Yes.
People say that quite a lot, that when they have come across one of my paintings, not just, oh, I like the colors, but people say, wow, there's a powerful spirit living in that canvas. And it passed me a message, or it gave me advice, it told me to go and do something. And that personally is the kind of art I enjoy making. I know it's not for everyone, and that's fine. It's good that there's a very wide expression of arts out there.
Yeah, well, I looked at your paintings not in reality on the side. So, and for me, what came over was a tremendous power. I still can feel it on my body. It was so deep and powerful, and I would not have been able to explain with words what the power was that I saw. It was just something that went through my body and went through my senses without me having linear words for it.
Wow, yeah.
And on a profane level, I could say, and I liked it very much. Because
I'm glad, thank you.
This is a different category there. So we already covered a lot, but still my question remains again and again, our relationship to nature, which I personally find so important to stress and reconnect. And you as a shamanic teacher, what importance does nature have?
Well, it is of extreme importance, and you know, in teaching students, like that's also why I'm starting that school in Sweden, because when you teach shamanism, and I teach a lot, I live in London, UK, so you know, I teach a lot of courses here, and you know, fortunately, we have a very large garden and very tolerant neighbors, so we're very lucky we can make fires and do really weird full moon ceremonies. So I'm very, very lucky, and London has cool parks as well. So London actually has wild places. But also I find that a lot of people, especially in cities, have become so cut off from nature. And it's my experience that when we become cut off from nature outside ourselves, we become cut off from our own nature. These two are actually like one and the same. So getting people out on land, ideally untouched land, unspoiled land, which is also, my husband is Swedish, and we have a house in Sweden, which I'm, you know, where there's a building I'm turning into a school. And that's the kind of land where, you know, you see no other human beings for days on end. You can make any amount of noise. But also the nature spirits are very, very strong, because the human beings haven't messed with the land. It's the wild. It's truly wild there. And I just find, because I've taught courses in like Spain and Sweden, like really in nature, that's where profound healing can occur, and also people can then connect up again, realize again, nature is like my nature. If I lose touch with nature, I lose the wild in myself. When I lose the wild side to myself, to a large extent, I lose my ability to create and to lead a vital and fully engaged life. We can become very, very boxed in and lead very narrow, small lives, like modern lives in front of the box. So in shamanism, it's extremely important to get people out there on the land, and also not always in the comfort zone either. Have people do, you know, in North Shamanism, we say Uteseta. It would be vision quest, would be the Native American word. But if you have people out in nature for prolonged periods, also at night when it's dark and maybe a little scary, there are bears and wolves in the area, so it's not 100% safe. But then yet, to be out there in nature, guided by your spirit allies, having these amazing visionary experiences. So for the kind of teaching I want to do, London is fabulous. I love London, but for the kind of where I want to go next with the teaching I need to do and what my students need, I need to take them to a really wild place so they can work on the land for prolonged periods. So that's the move I'm making at the moment.
Yeah, because I did Vision Quest, so for me it is so important to be in contact with nature and to also feel myself as part of nature here again. Yeah. And unfortunately with the big cities and our lifestyle, we lose it. And as you said, you used the word healing, and I would fully agree. It's also healing to be back in nature and really in nature and experience nature.
Well, it is healing, but it's also like what we are doing to the earth, the polluting and the littering and the political decisions we're making, the oil drilling, the ice caps melting, to my mind, that is possible because we think we can somehow separate off nature from ourselves. We think we can create bubbles where we live. And that is just like going on somewhere on earth. But when we really accept that all is one, and that in a very real way, the earth is our mother. She's the mother of our, physical body. We also have a human mother and a divine mother. But the earth is our bodies are a gift from Mother Earth. So the moment that we do not see, we don't impose a division between our body and the body of the earth, there is no way we can pollute and rape and do all of that harm. So it's getting people back into the mindset where it shouldn't even occur to us. It should not even occur to us as a possibility to treat the earth that way. It is a reflection of how cut off we have become from nature and Mother Earth.
Yeah, lovely to talk to you. But we're slowly coming to an end here, and I wanted to give you the occasion to say something that is beside my questioning here, something that you would like to let our audience know, some personal message, let's say. Is there anything you would like to share?
Yeah, sure. Well, I think the thing that comes to mind there, and I see it as my kind of personal, maybe it's my calling or my mission in life, but that is that there is so much trauma and pain in what I will call dysfunctional reality on Earth right now. And unless we really question that and explore different ways of creating based on the old, we will create more of the same, because this is the way we are conditioned. This is how we learn to create, and from young age and as children, this is how we learn to think and create and make decisions. So what I would like to say to the audience is that I think one of our biggest challenges at the moment is to actually realize what we're doing there. We're sustaining, co-creating dysfunctional reality. Well, actually, we can learn to dance into the very heart of creation ourselves and dance, co-create with the gods and the goddesses and all of these spirit beings and divine beings. And we can choose and learn how to make healthy reality rather than always having, trauma and dysfunction and having to heal it all again. And I've spent years doing and teaching healing work. I'm now beginning to think that, we need to sort of go one step further. We need to actually teach people, educate them in the art of creating healthy reality that is in alignment with the divine and the whole web of life. That's my invitation or message.
Yeah, thank you. And you also will have a gift to offer, a bonus gift to offer, which everybody will find here on the page.
The bonus gift is going to be a free online seminar, where we're going to explore what that means, creating healthy reality, changing the way we create.
Thank you for being here today, Imelda. I'm so grateful that I could talk to you.